addicted to flying, and you really can't fly in this game without firework rockets, and so I burned through these things like nobody's business. They're just gone before you know it, and then I gotta stay up all night hunting creepers, and then manually grow all of this sugarcane and chop it down for some paper so that I can craft my beautiful rockets. Thank goodness for Bedrock Edition. We can actually bone meal this stuff. We don't have to wait for it, but still, it's a process. And it's a process that I would love to automate today with a sugarcane farm. And I think it's gonna go somewhere up here, inside of the Iron Garden. Before we get started with the project, just take a look at what BluJay's been doing. Aren't you proud of me? No more junk just laying around the property. I've got a fully organized storage unit here with potions and tools and personal stuff like food and different variations of natural blocks and wood, valuable stuff. It's all organized and I can actually find things so that I can actually work on projects without driving myself crazy. The one thing I need to be aware of with this farm is the ceiling height above the iron golem spawning platform, because I don't want to interfere with that in any way, and I don't want the golems to start spawning up here instead of down there, because that would completely destroy the efficiency of the farm and knock it down to 0. If I understand correctly, because I always get this confused, I believe you have to have 6 blocks above the beds in order for iron golems to spawn. And so if we just count this out, that's 1, that's 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. So in theory, if I put these slabs right here where I've already kind of pre-built some of this out, I shouldn't have any spawn interference. I'm just gonna try it. And I'm gonna hold my breath and hope for the best. Well, so far so good. The golems continue to spawn in here, and nothing is spawning up there, which is exactly what I want. This sugarcane farm design is going to use flying machines, and there's a few things to take into consideration with flying machine farms in general, the first of which is chunk alignment. I'm gonna put this armor stand right here in the middle of the farm with this white banner, and you should see some crazy stuff happening here. This is Foxy No Tail's markers pack, and this right here is the chunk alignment grid. And as you can see, this is not perfectly centered in any one chunk. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks over here. There's a 16 block full chunk right there, and then on this side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks of this chunk over here. So it's not centered, which is no big deal. Chunk alignment is not a factor that you have to consider if you're going to build this, so just go ahead and ignore it. The other more important thing to consider for this design is the space. I'm going to start right here, 1 block away from this back wall, and I'm going to go up 2 blocks like this, and then I'm going to put any solid block right here. I'm going to use quartz because it matches my build, and then I'm going to take slime blocks and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1 slime block away from the edge, I'm going to put 1 more facing this direction away from the back wall, and on the right hand side I'm going to put 1 glazed terracotta. This absolutely has to be glazed terracotta, and I'll explain why here shortly. And then this one has to be a sticky piston. Directly on top of the slime block located behind the sticky piston, I'm going to put an upward facing observer, which is going to require me to put a couple slime blocks in place like this temporarily. I'll bust out the middle one, and then looking directly up at this slime block, I'm going to put 1 observer right here and then break that slime block. And that is the first half of the flying machine completed. The next thing that I need to do is put a temporary block right here on this sticky piston, followed by 1 slime block, and then I can break that temporary block, and then I'm going to place 1 slime block on the back side of this block right here, followed by 1 more slime block facing toward that wall where we started, and then 1 solid block, which I'm going to choose to be quartz. Then I'm going to go the opposite direction on this back line of slime blocks and go to this direction, followed by 2 temporary blocks. I'll break the one closest to the slime and replace it with an observer facing toward this temporary block, and then I can break that. And on the slime block directly across from this glazed terracotta, I'm going to add 1 sticky piston, followed by glazed terracotta right next to it. And that's the entire flying machine. It's done. Now, I need to secure this so that it does not go anywhere. Otherwise, if I accidentally set this off by triggering one of these observers, it's likely going to start taking off this direction and destroy a few trees before it breaks itself apart or runs into the mountainside, and we just don't want that. We want it to stop here. So obsidian right next to this observer is what's going to get this to stop on this side of the farm. I'm going to align myself with this glazed terracotta and go all the way to the back. I'll go up 2 blocks right here, and technically it's 3, but I already had a wall built here, so make sure you're counting correctly so it's on the same plane. I will put 1 obsidian right here, and that should be the bumper for this side of the farm. And now when the flying machine finally takes off in either direction, it's not going to leave the boundaries of the farm. The way that this flying machine is positioned to start with, if I put something in front of this observer, it's going to push that piston forward, but it's not going to do anything, which actually works in my favor because we need to build a starter for this flying machine to take off. So I'm going to put a temporary block right here, and then another temporary block right next to it. I'll break the block right next to the observer, and then replace it with a regular piston. I'll put another temporary block right next to this piston on the right-hand side, followed by 1 piece of glazed terracotta, 2 more temporary blocks right here, break this temporary block, and then 1 observer facing that temporary block. And then I can go ahead and break all 3 of these temporary blocks, followed by 1 piece of redstone dust on top of this piston. And that's it for this side of the farm. Over here, I'm gonna line up with this obsidian and look toward the flying machine and make sure that I go 1 block forward toward that. And then over here on this wall, build up. On the same plane, put 1 regular piston, a temporary block underneath, 1 permanent block right next to it but diagonally down, 1 temporary block right here, and then an observer facing that direction on top of this block. I can go ahead and break all of the temporary blocks, leaving this middle one, and last but not least, 1 piece of redstone dust right here. And now the entire flying machine contraption is complete, at least for part of the farm. Before I set this off and show you a test run, allow me to tell you how it works. This observer right here is going to be looking for a change. In this instance, it's going to be a sugarcane that grows directly in front of it. When this observer detects the change, it's going to send a redstone signal through this block to power this redstone to push this piston forward, which is going to move this entire part of the flying machine 1 block over. When it moves 1 block over, this piston will actually be in alignment with that slime block, and this glazed terracotta will be in alignment with that sticky piston. That is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, if we set this sticky piston off and push it into that glazed terracotta, it actually does not grab a hold of it. Glazed terracotta is, I think, the only block in the game. Maybe there's some exceptions, but at least for our use case, the only block in the game that cannot be grabbed by a sticky piston, which is fantastic because it will allow this to move 1 direction and then reverse directions based on where these glazed terracotta line up with the pistons. When this is shifted over, this sticky piston will grab this slime block and pull this entire side of the contraption forward. This observer will detect the change of this entire thing being moved forward and set off this sticky piston to make contact with this glazed terracotta and push that forward, and then it will release it because it cannot stick. And then this observer will also detect the entire platform moving that direction 1 block. We'll power this block to set this piston off again, grab that slime block, and the whole thing repeats over and over and over until it hits this obsidian bumper. As this flying machine is traveling down the farm, the backside of the flying machine will hit that obsidian, and this quartz block will run into this observer, which will set off this piston, which will then be in alignment with this quartz block right here and push the entire thing back that direction. So then the alignment of the pistons and the glazed terracotta will be reversed back to where they are now, so that this sticky piston will grab this slime block, bringing the contraption 1 block that direction, and then this sticky piston will make contact with that glazed terracotta, pushing it forward and back and forth until the whole thing is redocked back here, waiting for the next change of state, which would be another sugarcane growing in this spot. Whew! That's a lot of explanation, and I hope you caught it. If you didn't, just rewind the video and try again. Time for us to move on. I want to show you how it works. For my testing purposes, I'm not going to use sugarcane right here for the moment because I don't have anything to grow it on yet, but I do know from the explanation that we just gave you that these slime blocks will not stick to glazed terracotta, so they won't grab it as it goes by. and this is a completely safe block to try out. So if I place the block right here, you're gonna see this spring into action, push these forward, and then the whole thing's gonna take off. In 3, 2, 1, magic! Yes, it's working! And like I said, it's gonna make its way all the way down here to this observer, and as soon as that block hits that observer, boom, it gets pushed over and it flies back to the original docking location, and there it comes to a rest, waiting for more sugarcane to grow. The next thing that I need to do now is build out a couple more of these flying machines to utilize the fullness of this space. And the way I'm gonna do that is by putting a couple of temporary blocks right here, 2 to be exact, and then 1 more quartz right here to be the edge of the next flying machine. It's very important that you leave a 2-block gap space. 1, because you need it for this to fly right by this piston, and 2, the redstone circuitry that we're gonna put down here is actually 2 blocks wide as well, so it all fits nice and neat into this space. Hey, remember when I told you earlier that if you don't put an obsidian block in place, you might accidentally set the thing off? Well, I didn't do that, but just in case somebody happened to have, just break one of the observers to get it to stop flying. Man, I wish I had somebody to blame. Speaking of people to blame, I have a gift for Prowl. He actually was kind enough to give me some coal during my last video, and I'm sure that was a while ago for him now, but I got some things for him right here. I've got a red shulker box. I know he hasn't been to the end yet, but I'm gonna give it to him anyway, and it's called My Project Box 2.0. But here we go. Inside of My Project Box 2.0, I don't know if this stuff is valuable or not, but I'm gonna give it to him anyway. I left Prowl a special note just so he knows that it's here. Back to the flying machines. I've elevated the 2-block gap between the flying machines, but we're gonna pause on the redstone circuitry just for the moment, because the next most important thing is actually to line up the sugarcane with where it needs to grow. And the most important spot is right here in front of these observers. I'm gonna put 1 mud block, which you could argue I actually don't even need to use mud because I'm not putting hoppers below this. You could just as easily use dirt, but I like the aesthetic of this a little bit better, so I'm gonna use mud because I can. I am gonna grow some sugarcane here, but a lot of it's gonna get blocked by the flying machine itself, so I wouldn't really worry a whole lot about alignment this direction, but more, this is the important space that you wanna get the most out of your farm. And so I'm gonna go another block this direction so I can have water here and water here, and then I'm going to continue placing groups of 2 with a 1 wide gap between, which will bring me to here where I can put water right at the edge, and the flying machine will go all the way down to the end and bump up against this obsidian and still break all of the sugarcane in line right here. In the gaps between the mud blocks, I'm going to put 1 water source that's going to flow all the way to the end. All of these blocks are now considered to be saturated, and I can place sugarcane on them to start growing. I don't really need one here because it's literally never going to grow, but just for the aesthetic, I'm gonna have plenty of this stuff. It's not gonna matter. If I try to place any down right here, I'm clicking, but nothing is happening because there's no water source. If I put another water source right here, then I can grow sugarcane and continue throughout the farm. That is a beautiful sight right there. All of the sugarcane is in place, and the first piece has already grown. I'm so excited. For the collection piece of this, I'm going to create a redstone circuit right here along this 2 wide path, starting with an observer facing into this piston. Then I'll put a block right here with a redstone dust on top and 1 repeater facing out of that block. We need to set this repeater to 4 ticks, otherwise this circuit isn't going to work properly. And then I'm going to put 1 redstone dust right here and right here with 2 comparators going this direction and then 2 comparators going that direction, 1 solid block right here, and 1 redstone dust right here. I'm gonna repeat this same step, but I'm gonna put 3 comparators facing this direction this time, and 3 facing this direction, with another block and another piece of redstone. And then I'm gonna do this 1 more time, but this time it's gonna be 4 comparators in each direction, followed by a block and a redstone dust. Directly out of the back of this final block in the chain, I'm gonna put 1 repeater set to 1 tick, and then 1 comparator set to subtract mode, cloud, and then a loop of redstone dust, which is going to connect up with this, but I'm gonna solve that by putting a block right here, and it will keep these two redstone circuits completely separated. And then I'm gonna put one more redstone dust right here, followed by a solid block and one note block. This is actually gonna be exposed on the outer wall, but I'm gonna find a good way to cover it up. Last but not least for this circuit, this pulse extender chain going into that note block is actually going to activate when the flying machine takes off. I also need it to activate again as the flying machine is returning and somewhere about here. I can do that using this same redstone circuit, but I'm going to detect the movement of the flying machine going across this water stream right here. So on top of this comparator right here, I'm going to put one temporary block, followed by an observer facing that temporary block, and then I'll break it, and then 3 more observers so that they line up with this redstone dust. And so now, when this flying machine is returning back this direction, this observer should cross paths with that observer, which will set off this whole pulse extender chain again, keeping this note block ticking for as long as possible. Directly next to this note block, I'm going to put one solid block right here, followed by one hopper facing this direction for now. Again, some of this is going to be exposed on this back wall, and I'm going to have to figure out a creative way to cover it all up. And honestly, I think the best way might just be to put the hoppers in the floor, because then we don't have to worry about anything but the note block from the outside. And the only thing under this floor is the iron farm, so as long as we don't go below that, we should still be okay. I think that's all right. Hoppers going underneath the water on this last lane. The important hopper is right here. And I will tell you why as soon as I build 2 more of these. All right, all of the note block circuits are in place, and I've made a quick change. Instead of having a solid block here in my testing, I feel like this worked in my testing world, but it doesn't work here. So I'm gonna make this change. I'm gonna take this block out, and I'm gonna put glass right here so that this hopper does not get locked. And then I'm gonna put redstone dust right there, and now this note block should rapidly tick. With a solid block here, it was just ticking once and then not going anymore. And that's not productive for this farm. We need it to be rapidly ticking. So I'm gonna put a block here and build up. And now that I think of it, I may have to change this around entirely. Give me a minute to experiment with this because I think I'm gonna have a problem with a gap here. Hang tight. Okay, don't ask me what the difference between this and what I had before is. The only difference is that this redstone right here is 2 blocks going into that block versus 1. And the way that I achieved that is by taking one comparator out of each side of this pulse extender. So it's 2, 3, and 3 now instead of 2, 3, and 4. And I think that's gonna be enough to get us situated. Also, I forgot to put the observers over there. Man, BluJay, where are your brains? Okay, the system is activated. The flying machine is going. The note block is rapidly ticking, and it's headed back the other direction. It's still ticking, still ticking. As long as it makes it to here. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're definitely still good. Okay, well, I have no idea why 2 redstone makes a difference when 1 redstone does not work. Maybe it has to do with comparator strength? I have no idea. Somebody tell me in the comments. Anyway, it's time to put a roof on this building and then go get some allays. Allays are blue-winged creatures that can collect items for you, and they can be found inside of woodland mansions or pillager outposts at a 50% chance when the structure first generates. After you've found at least 1 allay, you can duplicate them by playing a music disc on a jukebox and then giving the allay an amethyst shard. At that point, the allay will duplicate and give you another. Allays will float aimlessly until a player gives them an item. At that time, they will begin to follow the player around. The allay will pick up any items on the ground that match the item in their hand and bring it to the player, or to an active note block that's within 16 blocks of the allay. You can take the item from the allay, which will return it to its original state of wandering until given another item to hold. This can be useful for taking allays with you while you mine resources, or for setting them up with a permanent job inside of a farm. So here we are. I've got a 1, 2, and 3 allays hanging out inside of the sugarcane farm. And here's what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna take one sugarcane and I'm gonna give it to that guy, and one sugarcane to that guy. And where's the third one? Back here? Hello? Don't be shy. Hey, here you go. So now, anytime a single piece of sugarcane in this farm breaks, and there's quite a lot of it, these allays are going to rush to go pick it up, and then they're not going to bring it to me. These note blocks that are hidden behind these pillars are going to activate as soon as the flying machines take off, and as long as I'm not in this room, they shouldn't come to me. They should start chasing the sugarcane down that's breaking one by one, and then get into range of each of the note blocks, whichever module decides to go off at whatever time, and then they're gonna try to throw it at the note block, and they won't be able to because it's behind the wall, and it's just gonna drop right here and go into storage. Let's actually give this a quick test. This looks like it has the most value right now. So I'm gonna put a sugarcane here and simulate growth, and then put a sugarcane right here, and then I'm gonna get out of the way. Look at them go, look at them go. They're going after all the sugarcane, and now they're within range. You can see the sound waves from the note block, and all of the sugarcane is getting tossed right into that hopper. Oh, it's beautiful. You guys are doing a great job. If I go all the way over here and close this off so that they don't get out, you'll notice I've got one chest right here. And you'll see a bunch of sugarcane in here. Not all of this is from this test. I did actually test it without the allays and picked it all up and put it in manually myself to make sure all the flying machines worked, but we've got working storage, and this is not gonna stay here. This is temporary storage, but it's gonna have to do for today. I've taken so much longer on this video than I wanted to because and I had a lot of trouble with the allays in my testing world. I had a few issues with the design that were causing them to either get pushed out of the farm or get crushed by the flying machines. So make sure you've got good gaps in your farm if you're going to be building this indoors like this. This is where they were getting crushed because this was actually right up against the wall. And so I've just made sure to make room for our allay friends to be able to fly around. But guys, that's gonna do it for today. Stick around. We're building a cool storage system for this in the very next episode.